Now look at this.
What's up, Happy Bio Penguins? Today we're going to do topic 7.2 on natural selection. So before we get too far, what's the difference between a genotype and a phenotype? So genotype is talking about what's actually in your genes, homozygous dominant, heterozygous, homozygous recessive, versus phenotype is talking about the physical characteristic that you're seeing based on the genes. So natural selection is going to act on the phenotype. Natural selection is able to select for favorable traits that are in the population. And what's going to happen is due to those traits being selected, it's going to modify the genotype. So just make sure we got that. Natural selection is going to act on phenotype, but it's going to modify genotype. And as we know, changes in our genotype are going to be shown in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, I know it's in a couple topics, but is talking about that if there's a change in the allele frequency, if there's a change in the genotypic frequency, that means that evolution has occurred. So selective pressures are going to be the things that are selecting for favorable traits. So let's look at an example. So let's look at this experiment. This is a transformation experiment that you probably did in your class where there's going to be bacteria that have not been transformed and then bacteria that has been transformed. By saying it's transformed, I'm saying that I've added a plasmid to it, and that plasmid specifically gives it resistance to ampicillin. I grow it on plates for no ampicillin, and I grow it on plates with ampicillin, and I'm trying to see what the difference is. So the selective pressure in this case is that I'm trying to grow only bacteria that is antibiotic resistant. So I'm going to put it on a plate that has the antibiotic. I've got ampicillin in this plate right here. And because of the ampicillin, only the bacteria that is resistant is going to be able to survive. The same thing happened with the rock pocket mice. So the rock pocket mice lived in an environment that kind of had sandy environments. It was kind of a lighter shade of landscape. There was volcanic eruption, which caused the landscape to be darker. And so these mice that had lighter fur colors were more likely to be consumed and eaten. And then there was a mutation in the MC1R gene that caused the fur color to be darker. And so they found that the mice that had darker colors or darker fur were more likely to survive. So the selective pressure there we're seeing was that the change in the landscape caused the darker mice to be more favorable. And so we saw an increase in their allele frequency in the population. So just gave you two examples that increase fitness. We talked about antibiotic resistance as well as we talked about the changing of the fur color to be darker to survive in darker conditions. Example of a trait that's going to decrease the fitness would be looking at the peppered moss. So before the Industrial Revolution, peppered moss were lighter shaded. And so as the trees got darker, being light was going to decrease the fitness of this organism. The organism was less likely to survive and less likely to pass on their trait. AP Bio Penguins, success. Bye, y'all.